Hey guys, Dr. Dobson, going to be doing a 2.7 DOB in this video. This is a patient that we saw for a recall exam after 2 years, and in just 2 years had developed a lesion that looked like this. We ended up having a pulp exposure, so we'll go over how I like to manage those, and we restored it with Aqua Forte. So here is a radiograph that we took, and you can see that in just 2 years, the tooth ended up going from something like this, where nobody would recommend a filling, to something like this. So definitely a big cavity. We're going to tell the patient that there's a really good chance that the tooth is going to need an endo, but we're going to do our best to save it from needing that, because the 2.7 is a tough tooth to endo, especially as a right-hander. And a quick note on evidence-based treatment planning is that I am of the opinion that stuff like this generally does not really need to be restored. We only did this one. My cutoff personally is that I need to see radiographic evidence of caries into the dentin clearly. And like even this one is pretty borderline indicated in my office. This is obviously mock band effect because it goes all the way up the root surface here, but this one is kind of localized. So you can say that is radiographic evidence of caries, but it's so minimal that you could probably get away. And you can argue that the patient might have a high caries risk because of an occlusal lesion going from this to this in 2 years. But if you look at the interproximals, they look pretty much identical as they did 2 years prior. So I think that interproximal tooth decay progresses a lot slower than people think it does. And I don't think that we're doing any favors by doing MODs on a tooth that looks like this. So we'll get into the footage. So this is what the odontogram looked like after we were finished. The 2.6 MO, 2.7 DOB, and then watches on the the 4 and the 5. So we'll get into the footage here. Here's the situation clinically, and we're just going to freeze with articaine and then start removing the frankly carious tooth structure with a large round diamond until we are back on somewhat sound dentin. And lots of water coming up into the mirror, kind of a difficult one access-wise, so we're kind of working blind a little bit, but we'll wipe the mirror off and inspect before going back in. And we'll take an intraoperative photo, and we can see that it looks healthy, but as soon as we go in with our slow speed, we can see that it is still very mushy. So sometimes decay looks brown and discolored, and other times it looks just like normal tooth structure, except that it's very soft. So that was one of those situations. So we'll go in and just keep peeling away the soft tooth tissue until we are back on hard structure. And we can see the buccal side of the tooth still has some decay on the enamel. So we know that we're going to have to extend the prep quite a bit more mesially. And we'll carry on. Blood is coming from the gums, so we're not too concerned about pulp exposure at this point, but we are just going to keep opening up our prep until we don't see any decalcification or decay along the DEJ. Here's another progress photo, and you can see that we're starting to see blushing from the pulp at the deepest part of the prep, but it is still quite soft. You can see just by the texture of the intraoral photo. And we're gonna put in an occlusal dovetail. I'll always put in an occlusal dovetail for interproximal restorations or class 2 restorations. And then finish our prep, put on a Talfamire, and actually gonna check again and see that there's still some soft tissue around the DEJ, so we're going to go in and remove that with the slow speed. And I think it was around this point at which I wish that I had stopped removing tooth pulpily, because we ended up having a pulp exposure. And yeah, here's where another progress photo, and this is where I wish I had stopped, but ended up wanting to peel back one more layer because it felt a little softer than I would have liked, and then ended up with this situation here. So I found that I have, well, first of all, we'll tell the patient that we have pulp exposure, and there's a 90% chance that the tooth is going to become non-vital and it's going to need a root canal. We'll offer to do a root canal on the spot, but the patient wanted to restore the tooth and see how it responded, advising them that it will be painful anywhere from a 2 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. And that's a risk that is assumed. So we'll do our best to sterilize the pulp exposure and then restore it. And I have not had great success with products like Limelight or Theracal. I have better success with sodium hypochlorite. So I'll actually go in with a micro brush with some full strength hypochlorite, and then just kind of brush the exposure, and then I'll rinse it off, etch 5 seconds, rinse thoroughly, dry it off, and then put some more hypochlorite onto the exposed pulp before lightly air drying that and then applying the restorative material. Say it's worked for me, but still high likelihood that this tooth is going to need an endo in the future. So there's the final result, and follow-up so far has been positive, but you never know if it's self-reported. Can be a bit suspect just because the patient doesn't want an endo, so time will tell.